Never did I imagine that a reunion camping trip with my high school friends would turn into a scary story that still lingers in my thoughts. As we ventured into the familiar woods, our laughter and reminiscences were soon overshadowed by eerie occurrences that defied logic. What started as an innocent adventure transformed into a haunting experience, etched forever in my memory. Here is our story. It's funny how life takes you full circle. With the help of Facebook, my high school friends and I were able to follow along as each of us became adults, advancing in our careers and starting families. But we all were involved in our own separate lives and never talked, and especially never saw each other in person. I'm not sure who brought up the idea, but as soon as it came up, we all quickly agreed and got excited about meeting up to catch up. So here I was in my mid-30s, packing for a camping trip with the same gang I used to roam high school halls with. We were a motley crew back then, and not much had changed. There was Jake, the unofficial leader, always brimming with confidence. Now a lawyer who could charm the stripes off a tiger. Sarah, the nurturing one, had become a teacher, her patience seemingly endless. Chris, the joker of the pack, still had that mischievous spark in his eyes even though he now worked in IT. And then there's me, Alex, the narrator of our little adventure, a graphic designer by day, an overthinker by night. We were all set for a weekend away from the noise of adult life, back to the woods near our old town. A sort of high school reunion, but with tents and campfires. Our preparations were, well, let's just say comical. Jake brought a tent but forgot the stakes. Sarah remembered the food but no stove to cook it on. Chris had a map but no compass, and I, in my infinite wisdom, packed a camera but no extra batteries. We laughed it off, though. This was more about reliving old times than actual camping prowess. As we headed out, our spirits were high, the air filled with laughter and teasing, echoes of our younger selves. Little did we know the forest that awaited us had its own plans that would turn our lighthearted escapade into something far more bewildering. The day was bright and promising as we set off, our car filled with the sounds of laughter and an old playlist from our high school days. We joked about who had changed the most and reminisced about our teenage antics. Arriving at the forest, we were hit by a wave of nostalgia. The trees stood tall and familiar, a silent witness to our growing up years. Our phones, our lifelines to the outside world, were reduced to mere clocks as we realized there was no signal. Guess we'll have to rely on good old-fashioned intuition, Jake quipped, trying to mask his unease. We shrugged it off, but I could feel a twinge of anxiety in my stomach. After setting up camp in a small clearing, we decided to explore. Chris suggested following a well-trodden path. But Jake, ever the adventurer, pointed to an old, unmarked trail barely visible through the dense foliage. "Let's see where this leads," he said with a grin. Despite my reservations, we followed, stepping into the unknown, away from the world we knew, into a forest that seemed to hold its breath as we ventured deeper. The trail, choked with overgrown roots and littered with fallen leaves, felt like it hadn't been walked on for years. We joked about being trailblazers, carving a path through the wilderness. That's when we saw the first symbol, an odd, angular shape carved into the bark of an old oak. "Looks like someone's a fan of Blair Witch," Chris laughed, tracing the symbol with his finger. Each step further along the trail revealed new symbols, carved with eerie precision into the bark of the trees. They were cryptic, almost ritualistic in design, each one distinct from the last. The air around us grew heavier, as if charged with an unspoken warning. Laughter died on our lips, replaced by an unsettling hush that enveloped the group. The once familiar forest now seemed alien. The trees morphed into gnarled figures that loomed over us. It felt as though the forest itself was alive, shifting subtly, disorienting us. The path, once clear, now seemed to blur and twist, leading us in a maddening dance. I tried to dismiss the creeping dread, but it clung to me, a cold hand tightening around my heart. Each repeated tree shape, each déjà vu moment, intensified the feeling that we were trapped in a loop. The symbols, once merely strange, now felt like harbingers of something dark and unknown. We were treading in a realm that was no longer ours, where every rustle of leaves sounded like hushed whispers. "Are we going the right way?" Sarah's voice was tinged with worry. Jake tried to reassure her, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. The symbols seemed to be watching us, and a chilling thought crossed my mind. Were they markers or warnings? As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, we stumbled upon a clearing. It was eerily perfect, a near-perfect circle surrounded by dense trees. The oddness of its symmetry in the chaotic wilderness struck us immediately. There was a reluctance in the air, but with night approaching and our sense of direction muddled, we had little choice but to set up camp. The usual banter that accompanied our camp setup was absent. Instead, there was a hushed, almost reverent way we went about our tasks. As we sat around the campfire, the light flickering on our faces, our conversations were sparse and strained. The symbols we had seen seemed to loom in our minds, casting long shadows over our thoughts. The forest sound seemed amplified in the darkness, every rustle and snap a reminder of our vulnerability. We tried to laugh, to reminisce, but our attempts at normalcy felt hollow, forced. An unspoken fear had taken root among us, the fear of the unknown, of what might be lurking just beyond the firelight in the enclosing darkness. Morning broke with a blanket of fog so thick it felt like waking in a cloud. My eyes opened to unfamiliarity, a disorienting haze that made the trees around us look like specters. We all emerged from our tents, each of us wearing the same bewildered expression. Did we move in the night? Sarah's voice trembled slightly, echoing our collective confusion. Stumbling through the fog, we tried to retrace our steps, but nothing looked familiar. The sense of dislocation was palpable, as if the forest had swallowed us whole and spat us out somewhere else. Then the fog began to lift, revealing a sight that sent a shiver down my spine. There, just a stone's throw away, were our cars parked where we had left them. How could it be? We had walked for hours, delved deep into the forest. Yet here we were back at the beginning without any memory of returning. The revelation hung heavy in the air. We exchanged glances, each of us searching for an explanation in the other's eyes. But there were none. Only a silent, unnerving acceptance of something beyond our understanding. The drive home was steeped in silence, a stark contrast to our lively journey just days before. Each of us was lost in our own thoughts, replaying the events, trying to make sense of the senseless. The forest had receded behind us, but its shadow lingered in our minds. As we drove further from the wilderness, our phones buzzed back to life, startling us with their sudden intrusion. Glancing at mine, I noticed the date. The whole day had vanished. The realization hit us all at once, yet no one spoke a word. It was as if voicing it would make it more real, more terrifying. We parted ways with half-hearted goodbyes, a mutual understanding unspoken but deeply felt. This was something we would not discuss, could not discuss. It was a shared secret, a shared haunting that would linger in the back of our minds, unexplained and unexplainable. Since that trip, there's been a subtle shift in me. A lingering sense of unease threads through my days. An undercurrent of a mystery I can't unravel. The forest, with its shifting shadows and unexplained phenomena, haunts me in quiet moments. We, the once inseparable group, have never spoken of that night. Not a word about the trip, let alone the lost hours. It's as if by mutual, silent accord, we've locked that experience away. A strange and unsettling memory we're all too hesitant to disturb.